A hijacking of religion. That's what one Islamic studies professor in the U.S. is calling Islamic State militants' campaign of violence in the Middle East. The fighters call themselves Islamic, but many say they do not represent the faith.
In the U.S., the debate has inspired some to say Islam needs a reformation. But religious scholars warn that such movements have been bloody in the past. Here's how VOA religion reporter Jerome Socolovsky covered the issue.
It was called the iconoclastic fury when 16th century Protestants destroyed statues considered to be idolatrous. Look familiar? Militants in Iraq have been destroying priceless treasures deemed to be un-Islamic, giving many who watch these videos the sense of living in a time warp.
Jerome, I thought it was kind of interesting that you started this report really going back to the 16th century when the Protestants then were destroying statues. Why'd you do that?
Right, well, partly I wanted to show that we've been through this before, we meaning the West in Christian history, but I also wanted to show that many people in the West, in America, are looking at this through Western eyes and ultimately come to this question of, well, if Muslims are doing what we did 4 or 5 centuries ago, are they also going to have the same process of reformation that Christians went through?
What does Reformation mean?
Well, Reformation was when Martin Luther, the leader of what we now know as Protestantism, challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. And essentially what it meant was that individuals could interpret Scripture, the Bible, for themselves.
Some commentators argue that Islam needs a Protestant-like reformation that rejects the traditional interpretation of Scripture. But Esposito says they should be careful what they wish for.
They'll say Islam needs a reformation. I sometimes say to some of my Muslim friends, what they're really saying then is genocide ought to take place, or close to it. Because we think of the Reformation as the Enlightenment, and we forget the 100 Years' Wars. From my point of view, what you've got is the hijacking of religion.
Islamic studies professor John Esposito says the injunction in the Quran to slay the unbelievers wherever you find them is being taken out of context.
How does Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi fit into all of this? What is it that he is trying to do?
Right, so what Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is doing is he's setting himself up as a kind of medieval leader. He calls himself a caliph. He's recreating the medieval Islamic empire called the Caliphate, and that is a very appealing concept for many Muslims because it harks back to a time when Islam was going through a golden age, when it was expanding, many people were converting to Islam. So it's a very kind of tempting, juicy idea for Muslims. Still, there are relatively few that accept it.
So it's sort of hard to see everything now as it is to see the statues and the artifacts being destroyed and to see so much death and destruction, the beheadings, the crucifixions and all of this, and it just seems that things are getting out of control. So is there any hope? Do experts see any hope in the future moving forward?
Well, I think there's hope. I mean, a reformation or a challenging of authority opens the door to many interpretations, and often, just good interpretations or peaceful interpretations can win out.
Is ISIS a part of Islam or not?
Well, that's what many people are talking about it, both within Islam and outside of Islam. In a way, some people argue that it is part of Islam because Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and his followers, they appeal to many passages in the Quran that talk about warfare. And Islam, when it was founded during a period of many wars, of tribal wars. But I think it's interesting to note that this and other stories that I do about Islam that talk about terrorism and extremism, almost all the responses that I get on VOA's webpage, on VOA's Facebook feed when these stories are posted, almost all the responses from Muslims are people who deplore what the extremists are doing. So I think there are many people out there, many Muslims out there, who really disagree and are and want and practice a much more peaceful, tolerant form of Islam than these people do.
Jerome Socolovsky is our religion reporter here at VOA in Washington.